Good morning and welcome to this episode of Stewarding Family Wealth, brought to you by Centurion Advisory Group. You're welcome to learn more about us at our website, which is centurionag.com. We will do the commercial later. This morning in the studio with us, we have Sandy LaRue, my co-advisor at Centurion Advisory Group, and Miss Anya Thane. And we have been talking for the last couple of episodes about family-owned and operated businesses. And Anya works for a family-owned business. Anya, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Good, thank you. Good. Introduce yourself. Tell us what company you work for and anything you want to share about just that 30 to 60 second introduction.
Okay. Yeah, so I work with IntegraCom. We provide reliable IT services for small and medium-sized local businesses. I have been there. Actually, I just realized today is my 8th year full-time anniversary.
Wow. Congratulations.
Work anniversary, yeah. It's a family-run business. It was started by my dad back in 2000. I've been helping out with super small things, even just like taking out the trash when I was 11. But I've been very small things on and off throughout the years, and then I went full-time when I was 19. So that was 8 years ago.
Sure. Wonderful. If it's okay, I'll just ask you about your family. Mm-hmm. And you're the oldest of three.
Yes.
You have two younger brothers. So tell us about the boys and what you guys do when you're not working. And I think you were homeschooled, as I recall. Just tell us about all that.
I have two brothers. I have Calvin, he is 3 years younger than me, and then Basil, who is 6 years younger than me. So there's 3 years in between all of us. We were homeschooled. My mom was going to homeschool us when we were in kindergarten just because she's like, I don't know if I want to send them to school yet. So she's like, well, I'll just homeschool them for kindergarten, and then I'll put them in school. Well, when I finished kindergarten, my youngest brother was born, and my mom realized she'd have to drive me an hour with a newborn baby and a 3-year-old, and she was like, oh, no. So my grandma was like, just homeschool another year. She's like, oh, okay, I'll do that. And then in that year, she decided, she's like, you know what, I like this. I think I want to do it long term. So it was great with my dad owning his own business, and then me and my brothers being homeschooled. When we were younger, we were able to do a lot of traveling, go to like lots of national parks, just a lot of fun things. So it was really great. And then also being in Gwinnett County, there's so many opportunities for homeschooled kids. We were involved in a lot of co-ops, a lot of little groups. I went to a one-day-a-week art school. It was a good way to grow up.
So that's so part of your education, and we have watched this before because a number of our clients have homeschooled their children, mm-hmm. and we are watching this. It's much easier in, what is this, the 21st century? Yeah. It's much easier in the 21st century than it was, say, 40 or 50 years ago. Much easier. Right. And so like the co-ops, for those that may not be familiar with homeschooling, these are environments where you as homeschooled children can come together maybe for band or choir or a chorus, orchestra, or specialty subjects mm-hmm. that might be beyond the scope of your mom's experience.
Yes. Like one of the things I did, I was involved in drama club when I was younger, a specialized art school. My brothers did a lot of speech and debate classes by a local lady who teaches those. We were involved in a PE class mm-hmm. at a local gym that was like every week. So yeah, it's basically anything specialized you want, you can find it by an expert to teach you.
There's sports too, don't they? Have some of those? Because I remember reading about that.
Yes.
So if someone's listening to us and perhaps they have littles at home, mm-hmm. In diapers or toddlers, and they're exploring, okay, do I put my kids in public school? Do I put them in a private school? Do I homeschool? They could probably just do an online search and find all kinds of resources in mm-hmm. terms of homeschool associations, clubs, leagues, things of that nature, right?
Yes, definitely. And there's also, I'm assuming they still have it, but I know when we were younger, they had a yearly homeschool expo down in Atlanta. So that's where a lot of resources can be found. Right.
And there are, I don't know how many curriculums there are now, but there are lots. And one private school I know uses it's a classic Latin curriculum, and that's about as far as I can go, but they teach literally Latin and mm-hmm. logic and a variety of other things. I'm just completely impressed, but that's off the subject today. Yeah. So, but in terms of travel, now, I remember you saying, you told us a year or so ago that you had been to all except 3 states.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes, yeah. So it's been a goal for many years to go to all 50 states. Originally, I was like, well, maybe I'll do all 50 by the time I'm 21, but that didn't work out. I think I got to 44 or something. But yeah, so actually earlier this year, I just traveled to my 48th state, Wisconsin. So I only have North Dakota and Hawaii left. I'm not sure where I'll go first. Apparently, there is a club called Save the Best for Last, which if you're the 50th state you visit is North Dakota, you can be part of this club and you get like a t-shirt and all this kind of stuff. I guess they're trying to market to get people to come there. Yeah. So yeah, that's the 2 states I have left. So I want to go to all 50. Got to make those happen the next few years.
That is so
my
neat.
recommendation is to go to North Dakota in the summer, because it would be cold in the winter, and go to Hawaii in the winter.
Yes.
Just, intuition on that one.
That's a good idea. So yes. I have high school friends that live in North Dakota. They raise it's cattle operation.
Oh, cool.
Believe it or not, yeah. But not only have you traveled stateside, you've also traveled internationally.
Yes.
Tell us more.
Yeah, so my grandma was born in Hungary, so there's definitely been an interest in Europe for years because we have some distant family members there. My parents, thought it was very important to take us places and travel and get us to experience different cultures. So the first time we went over there was in 2011. They took us on a trip to Germany, Hungary, Austria, that kind of thing. Met some relatives, got to see everything, and it was really a really good experience. I definitely think traveling just really opens up your eyes to everything. It makes you realize how lucky you are to have what you have. Even if you're not going to third world countries, it's still like even small things. For example, the amount of trash cans America has that are super convenient, how convenient it is to throw out trash is amazing. When you go to Europe, you have to spend hours looking for a trash can. So it's just even small things like that. I just think it just really makes you realize how small you are, and be grateful for what you have, because you don't know what can happen. But yeah, it definitely, another thing that really opened my eyes up is we went to Hungary in 2016, and at the time, the news headlines everywhere were refugees taking over everything, it's dangerous, don't go there. And they even had videos of Hungary and saying that, it was just crazy. And we went, it was a few weeks later, so I think most of them had moved through, but I did not see a single refugee. And of course, the news headline said it was chaos. So, I do think there were some a few weeks before, but it did really stand out to me that what you see on the global news is not always exactly what's happening. And to kind of be aware of that. It's very interesting. We went to really tiny towns in Hungary with one of my mom's cousins, and just to see how people live and how there's no job opportunities. The only job options are working for the train or being a teacher, and how people live quite poorly. Definitely opens up your eyes.
Wow.
So there's simply in Hungary. I've been to Hungary a couple of times, primarily flying into Budapest and then spending a day or two in country, then going on to Romania.
Yeah.
Just based on your experience there and having family in that part of the world, what are the job opportunities? What is industry, or what does work look like? I mean, because right now this is August of 2021 as we record this, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are help wanted signs everywhere, and the number one demand of employers is help. Truck drivers and people who work the lines,
workers.
Everything. So what is it like there by comparison? Do they have those opportunities? Do they have to leave Hungary? What does that look like?
This wasn't, the last time I was there 2017, and I think their economy has grown a little bit since then. But I do know back then, if you wanted a stable job, you had to live near the capital. If you were going to live outside another city, you were pretty much guaranteed to be poor. Most jobs were from the government or like schools. There wasn't really such a thing as small businesses. I think they've started creating them now. I think they got a new prime minister maybe a few years ago who's been encouraging more of that. But it's small. Like you can't move up in the world unless you live near the big city, which means there's not much happening in the smaller towns. There's not much economy. There's not much growth. Yeah, and of course compared to here, there's a lot of small businesses. There's a lot of the smaller towns. You can still have decent jobs. You can still have a nice life. So that was definitely points of interest, seeing how.
I remember when it's been 9 years since 2012 when Teresa and I were in Romania and Hungary, but we've been there 3 times. But what I remember is, I suppose you could call them small businesses, but really what they were was retail stalls. Okay, there would be like one of these huge buildings, sort of a warehouse type building, and then someone had divided up where you could rent a stall and you could sell scarves or you could sell chocolates or some specialty item, but that's all you carry. You sold this, and so if you were going to make a living, you worked in that retail stall all day, and that's what we saw. You work for the government or school system, all of which is run and managed by the government, or at the other extreme, there would be manufacturing, a German-owned company, or from one of the more developed Western European countries. From a manufacturing company from Germany would come in and hire local people, or of course then there's the French retailer. The Walmart of Europe is I'll remember it after we finish the podcast.
Yeah,
So,
I actually know what you're talking about. I
you know
can't
which one I'm
remember.
talking about?
Yeah,
But it's a French company.
Yes.
They have locations like Walmart all over the U.S.
Wow.
Yes.
They have locations all over Europe, Western, Eastern Europe. And so you had those that would hire people. But what seemed to be lacking, which is fascinating, was those middle-sized the homegrown companies that had 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 employees. They just did not exist.
Yeah.
And I'm not completely clear on the why behind it, but I know in Romania gained its independence in Christmas of 1990. It's either 89 or 90. I'm fairly certain it was when Ceausescu's Praetorian Guard took him out. Okay, there's a huge celebration. There's more to the story than that. It's a phenomenal story of the search for freedom and liberty, and it's a beautiful story. But since that time, that's been 30 years, just over 30 years, and Romania, which is just east of Hungary, not exactly the same cultures, but a common experience over the last 100 years under communist rule. Okay, they've had several constitutions just in the last 30 years, which makes the definition of property rights fluid. And we didn't get together today to talk about what you need to have a healthy country, but a legal framework is the core of it. And the United States, by comparison, has been operating under the same constitution, fluid or otherwise, for almost 250 years. Okay, and so you drive by, both in Hungary and in Romania, you drive by thousands of acres of fields laying fallow that were undeveloped, unturned, not planted, just there, and it scratched my head, and I said, there are questions about who owns this. So would you invest time, energy, labor, money, planting wheat? That's interesting. But yeah, I saw that middle-sized business. You had the one-person operations, and you had the international conglomerates.
Yes.
But there was no business infrastructure outside of that. That's the backbone of business you work in, business we work in, business our host here at Gwinnett Business RadioX. We are, by the way, on Gwinnett Business RadioX. Glad you joined us. But that's the environment we all work in. So is that what we got? Is that what we came here to talk about today? Who knows? Maybe it is.
Well, I think it's about opportunity, and that was what you were pointing out, is that as much as you like to visit family in Hungary, it sounds like the opportunities are here, and we don't always see them because this is what we're accustomed to.
Exactly.
So it's neat that you see that.
That was fast on the trash cans. I don't remember that. What were there 2 or 3 other things that just stood out to you that?
Yeah, I guess another thing people talk a lot about is restrooms. It's hard to find a restroom.
I was going to say that. You have to pay in some of the countries. I'm like, what?
Yes.
Yeah, it's usually like 50 cents or $1 to pay. But yeah, you have to put a little coin in to get into the restroom. It's a very interesting experience. Another thing is drinks. Like you know, obviously over here, you can get massive size drinks from McDonald's or whatever. Just get the very largest size. Over there, that's just not a thing. It's just one size. That's it. But yeah, I guess another thing is I feel like the average quality of life over here is slightly better. So a lot of those countries, even countries that are very well developed, even some of the Scandinavian countries, people can only afford so much. So they can afford, their options are they can afford a car, they can afford a decent sized house, or they can afford a little summer cottage. You can't afford all three. Or they can afford like a little boat. Like you can't have, if you have a house and a car, you can't do much else. If you don't want to have a car and you want to have like some, a little bit of vacation, and when I say a lake cottage, I'm talking a very tiny little shack. I'm sure it's quite fun, but it's almost like a camping style thing. So, even though they're very advanced in their society, there is still, you only can kind of reach a certain level of comfort and luxury, which I find over here, people can work in usually get a higher and higher level of luxury or standard of life if they really want to. Not everyone wants to, and that's totally fine. But, if they really want that nice car, they can just work extra hard or save up their money, and they could spend it on that. They could maybe cut elsewhere. Whereas I feel like over in those countries, it's not even an option. No matter how hard you work, you would never be able to have enough money to afford a really nice car or a nicer house.
That's true. That you've probably had friends that have visited the States, that live in Eastern Europe and that have visited the States for the first time. We've had the same thing as well. Friends from Romania that have come to the States and to visit, and for different reasons. And I've asked them, what's your first impression? And after having traveled, Teresa and I've been fortunate enough to travel. We've traveled not much. We've done some volunteer work in Romania, but other than that, we've just been to the British Isles, Edinburgh, London, and Paris, which is a wonderful 2 weeks we spent over there. And you're right, the pay for the restrooms, the things are small compared to what we're used to. But the people that have come here, when we asked that question, they said everything's big. And it's cold. The buildings are cold because
the air conditioning.
Their definition of air conditioning in Europe is very different. If I want to set my bedroom air on light frost, I can do it because I've got these big units that'll crank it up, baby. But it's big and it's cold. But you had an observation as we were coming into the show today. Talk about that.
I think it's just great that we get to have you here with us and talk. I feel like she wouldn't say this, and she's an exceptional young lady, and she has just made decisions throughout her life that I find exceptional, which is why I think she's an exceptional young lady. But, her parents have done a great job leading her and guiding her, but she has made decisions beyond that. She sets money aside regularly. She lives a life of, clearly she travels and stuff, but she's not a person of excess, which I think it's because of the appreciation, which she can speak to. But so my biggest thing is parents. I have 4 young adult children, and I've done the best I can as a mother, but you still wonder, what makes the difference with one person. And I have to say, actually, her siblings are incredible as well, but I'm just talking to her. I love her. So what helps you? What makes you when you wake up in the morning? What makes you make the decisions that you make and that are just different than so many other people and some of your peers?
Yeah. One thing that stands out to me is obviously I think your parents' spending habits and what they choose to do and not do does influence you to a certain extent. But one thing I do remember is when we were younger, my parents did not buy little things. So if we were traveling, stop at a gas station, we didn't go buy a snack or a drink. If we're traveling somewhere, we didn't necessarily get a whole bunch of touristy souvenirs. It's a small thing, and not anything is wrong with that, but it just that mindset of not spending money on the small things, maybe saving up for something bigger, slightly nicer. I think that's a very interesting mindset that can be help with saving money. I would also say my parents did not have. They were quite content in their life, so it wasn't always a feeling of, oh, I want something nicer, I want something better. They were never, jealous of what other people had or didn't have. So I think that kind of mindset helped because it just gives you a certain level of contentness in your life. Obviously you always want to be striving for something better, but you also want to have a certain level of being content. But I think as far as being, it's a little bit of a personality thing. I do think, even compared to some of my siblings, I'm tend to be more saving than them, and we've done some different classes, and the personality type that I am is always the very saving, the very analytical, the very paying attention to the numbers. So I think that also has a little something to do with it. But I find finance interesting. Even just small things like my grandparents, my mom's parents, my grandpa didn't make a ton of money, but they lived a very comfortable life because they were very cautious with what they spent it on. He even retired early, even though he didn't he was at the time was working for the government and didn't make a ton of money. And my mom said she grew up having everything she needed, but not necessarily anything she wanted. And she said it wasn't a bad thing. Awesome. So it was just having those examples, I think, taught me a lot. yeah, even just from a young age of trying to work and save money. My parents definitely encourage us kids to pay for things on our own. They weren't likely to just hand me $50 and say, oh, go have fun. It was more like, oh, you got some babysitting money? Which is like, yes, I do. So I think it was also very much ingrained in us that we take care of ourselves, we pay for ourselves, so we need to be aware of that. Like, yeah, we could spend all our money on doing something fun, but we might need to save it for something in the future because we also need to pay for that as well. It definitely, I think, parents helps out a lot, but it doesn't, like you said, sometimes there's parents who have great spending habits and somehow the kids just missed it.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're VP operations for Integracom, and so that suits you well.
Yeah.
That suits you well, that structure, and same thing. I'm intrigued, though. You're 27, and you have made decisions around money that are just superb in terms of saving, investing, and setting. Just watching those decisions. So, what's sort of the why behind that, and why saving and investing and setting money aside versus anything else? I mean, and I wish I could go into numbers, but I cannot. All I can say is you have made some exceptional decisions around when you have $1. You know, I was having a conversation with my granddaughter who's in high school, and she's working, lifeguard. I said, when you have $1, or when you get a paycheck and it's $100, here's what you do. I said, you apply this for life and you'll be fine. I said, the first $10 out of that 100, you give it away. Just live with an open hand. Just give it away.
Yeah.
I said, and the next $10 you set aside for yourself. You start now and you do that. I don't know what she'll do. I've had one conversation. I'm going to have another one. But, you've done things like that.
Yeah. I think people sometimes, I feel like it's important to look for experts in a field. So obviously I'm not a finance expert. I didn't have a finance degree. But I do find, even when I was younger, my parents did have a financial advisor. So it seemed like a very worthwhile investment to make was investing, because retirement is a big deal and saving up money for your future is a big deal. So having someone who is an expert in that field and does know what to do with it is a worthwhile investment of some of your money. So I even when I was really young, I would talk to the financial advisor, say, hey, what should I do? Also, a lot of matching. So like, IRAs, simple, all that kind of good stuff. 401ks, a lot of companies offer matching. And, in some ways that's like double your money. It may not be much, but it really is double your money. So I definitely, as soon as I was eligible, I started putting money in there because at the time I was young and didn't need too much. And then as time went on, I was like, oh, well, let's just see if I can keep that same amount and not change it. And let's see if I can just live a little bit cheaper to keep that same consistent savings going. But yeah, I think that automation, if you get it automated and going, that's helpful because you don't have to think about it. Because I know sometimes for me, I'm like, oh, I have to think about it. Like even something simple, like I had some kind of account with some insurance and they would charge you $1 for paper invoices every month. And, I let it go on for like 6 months just because I couldn't be bothered to think about it and change it. So it's definitely the more automation is the better.
Yeah. All right. So if you could give 2 or 3 pieces of advice to anyone that's listening that was born in the 80s or 90s.
Yes. Okay.
What are the 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give them?
The number one thing, if you've got a 401k option, go for it.
Okay.
Definitely go all the way up to the matching, more if possible. I guess I think it's also very important to know where your money is going. So that would be the second piece of advice is track. Like how much are you spending on something? How much are you spending on certain categories? Is it way less than you thought, way more than you thought? Just to see, because even for myself, I feel like I'm very cautious of what I spend money on. But a few days ago, I was looking through some of my accounts. I was like, my goodness, I didn't know I spent that much money on food. So I do think it's good to kind of know what's happening, because obviously you can't fix anything if you don't know what's going on.
Smart.
Good. So know where your money is going, and if you have a 401k or employer plan, put money in it.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, this brings us, friends and neighbors, to the end of our first episode with Anya. Stay tuned for more, because we are going to talk with Anya more about what it's like in the family business. What is it like to work there, and lots of questions around that. And there are a number of you listening, I know, that fall in that category. Either you're the founding owner of the company or you're the second generation with questions about how all this works. So we're going to continue to visit with Anya in the next episode, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, this is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisory Group, where you're on the air with Gwinnett Business RadioX. What's the story with us? We are simply here to serve, to help you make decisions around tax planning, let's pay less and more, charitable gift planning, let's give well, and then how do we transfer assets and values across generations. You can find more at our website if you want to talk to us. That's it for today. Talk to you soon.